Legal Live is brought to you by Farah Farah. Comments and opinions expressed on this radio program do not constitute legal advice and do not create an attorney-client relationship with you. If you have a legal problem, a formal consultation will be required outside of this radio program.
This is Legal Live with Eddie and Chuck Farah. They're talking the latest legal news and answering your questions. To call Legal Live and ask Eddie and Chuck a question, grab your phone and dial 855-765-1045. That's 855-765-1045.
Jacksonville, it's Legal Live with Chuck and Eddie Farah. If you've got legal questions, reach out today, 855-765-1045. Lines are open. We're just waiting for you to join us. If you've got questions, our legal experts are standing by. Fellas, how you doing today?
All right.
Good to be here, Scott. It's good to be anywhere.
Welcome to LSU Appreciation Day.
Yeah. Yes. Game's on right now, but hopefully you're listening to the Legal Live.
Listen here, watch there. It's all good. We can multitask. We're complex creatures that way.
We're learning. Yeah, that's what it's all about on a fall Saturday. We want to get some things talked about. We're going to talk about something we talked about a couple of weeks ago, Scott. And if you can recall, we had a caller who mentioned that she had purchased a vehicle from a dealership in St. Augustine, and that they provided her with a carfax report that indicated that the truck had never been in an accident and that it was all good. And
I remember. And then she found out later when she brought it back that there was a record of sale on it.
Yes, there was.
Or a record of a collision, rather.
Correct. While it was in the possession of the same dealership she had purchased it from. So it was in their possession when that accident happened. But we had a caller that did call us later on in the show. We spoke to him, or I spoke to him. And he told us, which probably makes sense, he goes, it takes about 90 days sometimes for the information to get from the state to the Carfax. So just because an accident happens on Monday doesn't mean you can run a Carfax on Tuesday and know that vehicle's been involved in a collision. So it takes some time to get that information out. So, dealerships, it's a place of business, a big place. Not everybody knows that a car has been in an accident. So,
did we find out who it is that's responsible for reporting that to Carfax? If it's a state agency, or if it's the drivers or the insurance company, or if it's something that generates when there's an incident report from any kind of a police filing of an incident?
Yeah, well, it was my understanding, according to this caller out, they sounded like they knew what they were talking about, indicated that it comes from the state, and the state is behind in reporting that information to these private companies, because Carfax is a private company. So, but the Carfax gets it from the state. If the state doesn't have it or release it, then nobody. You don't have it. You don't know if it's been in an accident, and that's probably what happened there. It probably.
Well, then I will retract my upcoming otherwise critical comment about the sneakiness of people with a material interest in selling the car.
Yeah. They're getting one. They're getting a free ride on this one, Scott, because they're going to claim, hey, we never got the information from Carfax, or Carfax never got it, because the Carfax report was pretty clean, or according to what she had said. But
I did. I'm curious whether the dealerships have knowledge even before the public.
If the salesman knew, but how you going to prove the salesman knew about it?
But it happened while the vehicle was in the possession of the dealership. So
yes,
somebody at the dealership knew this happened because they were driving it.
Right.
Yeah.
But did the salesman know? That's the question. You're going to have to prove knowledge to the salesman. That can be very difficult, especially when you get them before a deposition and they all get together and everybody gets their story straight, which happens a lot.
We need a used car forensics team on this now.
Yeah. But that was an interesting call we had. Now I want to move on to something else. If, we talked about, and this is something we have talked about on the show previously, probably a couple of years ago. And it's about felons who have lost their right to vote, people who have been convicted of a felony and have served their time in jail and now cannot vote because there are some outstanding fines and penalties associated with their conviction that they have not paid. And so what happened, the Florida Constitution was amended right after the Civil War to prevent convicted felons of voting. And that law's been in effect since, right after the Civil War. In 2018, I mean, everybody was, and there was a groundswell of support to amend the Constitution and eliminate that provision out of the Florida Constitution. So in 2018, there was a vote, and the people of Florida voted to allow felons who have completed their sentence, who have done what they were supposed to do, went to jail, got out, and are now back into society to vote. They had a right to vote again. Okay, well, the legislature comes back in 2000 recently and says completing your sentence means paying all your fines. Having done the time is not good enough. That you've got to do your time and pay the fine. That the definition of completing your sentence is paying all the fines that are associated with your conviction. And that puts a lot of people in a very bad situation, Scott, because some of these fines are a lot of money. Some of these people, and I'm reading stories, I can go through story after story of people who did their time, or back working. They've got families to support. There's one guy who has a $20,000 fine for selling $40 worth of drugs back in 2012. And now he's raising 3 girls on his own. He went back to the judge and says, "Judge, I can't pay the fine. The only way I can pay $20,000 if I go back to criminal activity. There's no way for me to make that kind of money. Right. I'm a landscaper making $13, $14 an hour. I've got tuition. I got 3 kids to raise. Yeah. You want me to pay back $20,000? I just don't have it. There's no way I can make it. I don't have the job skills. I don't have the ability. I don't have the education to go get a job that will allow me to pay back $20,000. I mean, he's not been in any trouble since then, but he's drugged back in front of the judge. And he tells the judge, the only way I can pay you this fine is if I go back to the to the old ways of making a living. So, I mean, people are really put in a catch-22 position because of this new amendment. After we get a constitutional amendment that allows people to vote. And the Florida legislature comes back in and says no, because they want to keep, there's like 700,000 people who have been convicted of felonies that have lost their right to vote. I mean, you have to look at it. It's really a political thing, because if you, and this is not a political show, I don't really keep up with all that, but Florida lost. Trump won by, I think, 300,000 votes in this last one. He took Florida with about 300,000 votes, something like that. So anyway, I mean, you look at 700,000.
It swings it.
So it's a political thing, and it shouldn't be political. It's this is not political.
It's become political because when they drafted the law, I mean, did they not think of that?
Well,
I mean,
they're saying it was a Republican legislature. It's a Republican legislature that did it. After the amendment that allowed convicted felons who had served their sentence to vote, the Republican legislature came in and said, redefined it. So, completing your sentence means you have had to pay your fines. Okay, so all these people. I mean, some of these fines. Let me tell you. I mean, here's this guy.
To me, it should be like a decreasing time after so many. Every year that you stay out of trouble, the fine decreases.
Well, they're not going
to where it's zero. And then you can vote. And then you're satisfied.
Well, they could keep the fine out there. They just should say.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just trying to reach a middle ground there,
Well, let me tell you what's even gotten worse right now is like this guy. I mean, he's a landscaper, hasn't been in any trouble. It's 2022 now, 21. This happened. He was out and he got out of prison in 2012. Like I said, he's a friend. And I mean, I've got story after story here of people who, they don't even know what their fines are. There's one lady who goes back to Volusia County. She doesn't even know what her fine is. She can't find out the amount. And because what's happened is the counties have sold the debt. It's like a collection agency. So the county doesn't even have the debt anymore, and they're getting phone calls, and they're getting charged 25, 35, 40% interest on their fines. So it's a no-win situation. And the other kicker, I mean, it gets worse and worse and worse. When you don't pay your fine in Florida, they suspend your driver's license. I mean, you've got, listen, 90% of the people in Florida have to drive. I mean, there's not like mass transit around here. I mean, very few cities have any. I mean, we don't have subways.
New York City. Yeah.
I mean, it's not like New York where who needs a car. It's not like Chicago or New York where you can get away with. I mean, everybody's got it. I mean, a car is a necessity in the state of Florida. And so if you don't pay your fine, you get your license suspended. And what happens if you get caught driving on a suspended license? You go to jail.
Right.
So I mean, it's these people who have gone to prison, paid their debt, get back out, or trying to make good and do good, support their families, are getting a hard way, being put in a hard way.
The law has no effect for a lot of them because
So I don't know, Scott. It's a bad situation.
I'm sorry, I'm in here discussing training stuff with a new producer, so I just missed that whole situation right there.
Well, I mean, you didn't. I mean, thank God you don't have to worry about it. But I mean, it's just people who we're talking about.
Yeah. How do you?
I'll tell you later.
Fair enough.
Don't worry, we can get caught up on it later.
Well, we've had a nice little speed bump, so we'll just take advantage of that opportunity to take a quick break, and then we'll be back for more of Legal Live with Chuck and Eddie here on 104.5 WOKV. If you've got legal questions, give us a call. Lines are open at 855-765-1045. So reach right out and join us now here on Legal Live on 104.5 WOKV. Jacksonville, we are back on Legal Live with Chuck and Eddie Farah. 855-765-1045, the number to call if you want to join the conversation. Give us a shout. Our top priority, your calls. In the meantime, back to the conversation at hand, and we're talking about some voter rights.
Yeah, while you were taking a break, Scott, we were talking about people who have
taking a break. I was doing important producer stuff.
Oh, I know, man. We'll taking a break, teaching. I know you're a mentor here. I know you run this place, man. We come here. You're the only person here. I mean, you run this entire. I mean, you've got 100,000 square foot, 200,000 square foot building, and you're like,
you're on top of it.
You're in. I mean, you're in this whole operation. I mean,
gaze upon my works, ye mighty in despair.
Yeah, but anyway, getting back, we're just talking about the Florida law that was recently passed. Kind of almost revoking the constitutional amendment that was passed in 2018 that gave convicted felons the right to vote.
Right. It was like as soon as it got on the books from a vote approval, then state bureaucracy moved to...
Not bureaucracy, the legislature came in because it was a Republican legislature that passed it.
Right.
And they said, having completed your sentence means paying all the fines.
Yeah, they came back with a loophole on that.
Yeah, it was a hole in the amendment. You know, they didn't think it out. You would think that they defined what completing the sentence meant in a little more detail.
But
we were having an interesting discussion last week about how vague some legal definitions can be sometimes. So, you know, it's not an issue until the point that somebody raises it, and then you realize, we forgot that, and it becomes the issue.
Vagueness keeps us in business.
Well, but the thing is, you know, it's more of to me, what's upsetting is it has become a political issue, because the people look at, these are people who probably, these convicted felons, probably in all likelihood, probably would vote Democrat. That's what they're being looked at. Okay, they're probably Democrat or would vote Democrat for the Democrat candidate. So then you have another side that doesn't want to. I mean, they want to prevent people from voting. I mean, that's what it's all about. I mean, these people have done what they were supposed to do. They've served their sentence. Now a lot of them are out working, trying to support their families. Some of these fines are so ridiculously high. There's no way they could ever pay them. They're working. They're trying to support their families, and there's just no way they're going to be able to vote. Some of these, if you read about some of these people, they don't even care anymore. You go, listen, I'm not going to pay that fine. There's just no way I can pay $50,000. I've got a family to support. I got phone bills to pay. I got health insurance or whatever it is. I got to put food on my family's table. That's more important
even
than me having a right to
even
vote.
with like a structured program or something, that balance is so unattainable over such a long term. Yeah. That it might as well be that they don't have their right reinstated because they're not going to be able to meet that condition anyway.
There's never a way they can meet it. They just kind of threw their hands up in the air and say, well, I'll just never vote again. So that's what's happened because of this new law that was passed, and it's really unfortunate. I don't know if we have anybody out there listening who's been through this or is dealing with it, but we'd like to hear from you and see what you got to say about it.
855-765-1045, the number to call.
You know, there's we have a lot of people in Jacksonville that ride motorcycles, Scott, and you know, the helmet is you don't have to wear a helmet. I mean, you're probably smart to wear a helmet, but as long as you have certain insurance coverages in Florida, you're not required to wear a motorcycle helmet. But if you do wear a helmet, you know, the federal government under 49 CFR 571.218 requires the helmet to meet certain safety standards. And you always think oh, well, it's a certified helmet by the federal government. It's been tested by the federal government. It's passed this standard. They call it Standard 218, and it should be very safe. Well, you know, these standards are the very minimum. But if you purchase a helmet, it should have on the helmet, you should be able to find the sticker. On the sticker, you should see, it should give you the name of the manufacturer, the model number, and the fact that it's passed the Standard 218. If it hasn't, you should not use that helmet. But all new, this is the recent law, it just got passed, but all new helmets should have that information on the helmet. The government is now testing the helmets in 3 respects, these motorcycle helmets. They're inspecting impact, penetration, and retention to see if it's passed it. Those three tests. It's being tested under varying conditions: ambient, low temperature, high temperature, and water immersion. And so they are testing the buckle. They're subjecting it to pressure, to weight, and they're trying to figure out what is a helmet that's going to protect you when you're injured. What the government is requiring really for these helmets is really the minimum standard.
Yeah.
So I'm telling you, don't feel that you've got the ultimate protection just because you've got a helmet.
Money on the right helmet is what you're saying.
Yeah. Just because you got a helmet, it's past Standard 218 issued by the federal government. Let me tell you, that's the minimum. And the testing that the federal government is using is not that extensive.
It's the equivalent to the points you get when you spell your name right on a standardized test.
Yes.
It's a minimum standard.
Right.
Well, we got plenty of lines open, 855-765-1045. If you want to chime in, feel free to give us a call. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back more with Legal Live with Chuck and Eddie Farah here on 104.5 WOKV, Jacksonville's News and Talk. Jacksonville, we are back on Legal Live with Chuck and Eddie Farah. 855-765-1045, the number to call if you've got questions. Our legal experts standing by to take your calls and answer your concerns. And we've got our first caller of the day. We've got Bill from Hilliard with some opinions on the felon fines and voting rights and such. Bill, you're on the Legal Live.
Hi.
Hey, Bill.
Actually, calling from Flagler Estates. And I've got a couple ideas here for taking a bite out of crime. I just thought I'd run them by you and see what your opinions are. My first idea is that when someone gets sentenced, they're convicted of a crime, they're being sentenced, and the crime involves perhaps injuring a person in some way or other, that maybe they should get 2 sentences all at once. One would be amount of time they have to spend in jail, and then the second would be a dollar figure that they have to pay, of which the majority of that dollar figure would go to compensate their victim financially for whatever pain and suffering they may have inflicted. So in other words, you're in jail, you served your amount of time, you still don't get out until that victim has been compensated. But the state pays you a salary. You just don't get the salary. So the state would pay you instead of a tiny little amount, that they do currently. They would pay you normal wages for the work that you do. It's just that it wouldn't go in your pocket. It would go to compensate your victim. And you don't get out of jail or work release, as the case may be, until that victim has been compensated.
Yeah, but Bill.
Yeah, well, that's thinking. That's an alternative.
Yeah, but Bill, that's not going to work because some of these people, I mean, God forbid, I mean, somebody who's causes, I mean, I mean, sometimes medical bills can be $50,000, $100,000. A guy in jail, what are they going to pay this guy? How much are they going to pay him per hour so he can pay these people back? We're talking about the right to vote. We're not talking about they can still be sued. I mean, the victim can still sue them and get a judgment. I'm talking about we're talking about the right to vote right now.
Like you say, they won't be able to pay the judgment. The only reason they'd be able to pay the judgment because the state is paying them a salary and they're not getting the salary. That's why they'd be able to pay the judgment, and that's the only way that victim will ever be compensated. But hey, if you've inflicted that much damages on someone that they have $50,000 or $100,000 in medical bills, you may have to sit in jail for a really long time before they're compensated. But the thing is, my second idea is they should, on the back of every bus, they should have a little bathroom like they do on the Greyhound buses, and they should also have porta potties at all the major bus stops. And then when someone gets community service that they have to do as an alternative to being in jail, make them clean out all these porta potties and clean out all these toilets.
Yeah.
And
well, Bill, I don't know what I don't know what you're getting at. I'm talking about the right to vote. These are people who have served their sentence.
Yeah, but he's trying to say, how can we get them to pay that debt back? And alternatives so that they can get to the right to vote.
But part of the problem to that is, where's the state going to come up with money for paying them any kind of a salary for compensation? It's not like the federal government where they can just go print more money.
Yeah.
Right. They would have to figure out some way of working this into the state budget to be able to pay these people to do the work.
Yeah.
But see, it would all come back to the victims who. Because, let's say someone were to rob me, and in the process they also shot me or stabbed me. I've got all kinds of expenses now because of that, as well as the pain and suffering, and I'm not actually being compensated, even though that person goes to jail for it and pays their debt to society. I'm still not getting any reward for all that pain, suffering, and loss of wages and everything else that went into it. This is a way to make the criminal pay.
Well, you can
the criminal pay to make me whole again.
Yeah.
And why would they have the money to do it? Well, they'd have the money to do it because the state would be paying them to do a particular job. They just wouldn't be getting the money. I would be getting the money.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when they get out, Bill, I mean, you're going to put them in jail for 50 years to pay off a debt for a crime that was not maybe a low-end felony or something. There, maybe a reckless driving charge. I mean, you can go to jail for you can go to a felony. I don't know, maybe. I mean.
Yeah, but
the example I gave was a guy who's sold $60 worth of drugs and got a $20,000 fine. He can't pay the fine. He loses his life. He's now the state is suspending your license if you don't pay the fine.
But what if
he's got 3 kids to support? He's trying to pay the rent. He's making $13 an hour as a landscaper. Right. You're going to punish his whole family. You're not just punishing him now.
Yeah, the fine is not.
Yeah,
it seems high.
If it's a minor crime like that, a possessory crime, then there wouldn't be such a high debt to a person. But if you're going to go out there and ruin a person's life by the crime that you commit, you may have to spend many years in jail to compensate that person. And I think you should be forced to do exactly that.
Well, that's why you have the civil justice system. You can sue them.
But it wouldn't mean anything. Like you said, the person is judgment proof.
But how much are you going to, if a person, what is the state going to pay somebody who's in jail? $50,000? Let's say you've caused somebody $300,000 in medical bills.
Maybe
you'll never get out. You'll die in jail working to pay off that debt. That's not the way our Constitution works.
Have them work on a farm
Isn't
to
that
feed
cruel
the hungry.
and unusual? Don't we have cruel and unusual punishment in our Constitution? You can't keep somebody in jail forever just to pay the debt.
It's not an Eighth Amendment violation because we're not talking cruel and unusual punishment. I think it makes sense that they should have to compensate their victim. Obviously,
there is a way to that's sort of set up. But not everybody has the wherewithal to pay everybody back.
Well, Bill, let me ask you a question, Bill. Would you be willing to sponsor a bill to introduce legislation in the government that says the state has to allocate funds to pay felons?
Yes, I think that's exactly what they should do.
Do you really think that a proposal like that is going to get through a state legislature? That they're going to budget money to pay felons?
So if you think about it, if I'm a person who's been injured in a crime, then the person who committed the crime probably has no ability to pay me back. But what he does have is his whole future life ahead of him that is now going to be, he's going to be my slave, because he's going to be sitting there in jail, forced to work, and the money's going to be coming to me, and the state's going to be paying him a decent wage.
But Bill, most of these crimes are not like you're saying car accidents where people are laid up. These are they're drugs, they're bad checks, breaking and entering, assaulting somebody maybe, or threatening somebody. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they're in jail. These are typically these are crimes of violence, or not like drug crimes and things of that nature.
But what you're doing in that case is you're creating a circumstance of indentured servitude, and that is constitutionally prevented now, first and foremost. But secondly, it equates a financial degree of restitution in association with a physical duration of term served, and that institution, that policy already exists. So you're reinventing the wheel here.
Legal theories, and it's another thing as a practical matter to say, okay, yeah, you could theoretically sue that person and win a judgment, but the judgment wouldn't be worth anything because he doesn't get any money to pay. So the way I'm proposing, it would come out that the state would be paying him, but he just wouldn't be getting the money. His victims would be getting the money if he has created these victims.
Bill, this whole conversation is dealing with convicted felons who have lost their right to vote. You've turned it into a restitution thing. The only reason I brought up the restitution is that the restitution amounts are so high, most people can't make it, can't pay it.
They won't be able to pay it. That's right. They won't be able to pay it. But under the system I'm proposing,
but they'd still be in jail forever. It doesn't make any sense.
Jail forever. They might be in jail for 10, 20, 30 years. It depends how much damage they have inflicted on
remember, there is a fund currently for victims of crime.
Yeah, and there's usually no money in that fund.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the example I gave of this guy who's got a $20,000 fine on a $60 drug deal. Who's the victim of that? Why does he pay $20,000 back?
Well, what if instead of the drug deal we're talking about, what he did was to rape some woman and give her some disease?
Well, he was only in prison for 8 years. I doubt if he'd
the victim, even though he spends his time in jail, the victim really has not been compensated.
Well, who's the victim? The state?
That's my point. Is that the victim?
No, if it's a crime that injures somebody or murders somebody, or
right.
Well, you don't get a right to vote. You don't never get because you're never get out of jail. I mean, the law is that if you're convicted, you're convicted felon. But if you're convicted of a murder, you don't get your right to vote.
No, but
you're never getting out.
Not murder, but if if you injure somebody,
but most of these
it's a DUI and you hit somebody and you go to jail and they've got a back injury and they've got $15,000 in bills for getting treatment.
Yeah.
And that's part of the fine. I mean, should he pay it? Should he not pay it?
Well, he wants to pay it
to get the right to vote.
But he should have right to vote. Yeah, if he can't pay it.
So there's got to be an alternative. I think the problem was in the drafting of the amendment early on. They never thought of that. And then
I don't see any constitutional problems with the system that I proposed, because all you're doing is forcing them to compensate their victims. That's not cruel and unusual punishment.
It is if they can't meet the definition of that restitution, though. If that's not possible for them to achieve, then it's an impossible standard to uphold, and that is cruel and unusual.
I disagree with you there. I think that if you can't do the time, don't do the crime.
I'll agree with you on that point, Bill.
They did the time.
But that's the point. They've done the time. Bill, we appreciate your call today, man. And as always, thank you so much for your opinions.
Yeah,
we've got Sean in Middleburg on the line. Sean's got some comments, too. Hey, Sean, you're on Legal Live with Chuck and Eddie Farah.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Hey, Sean.
Yeah, let's bring a little sanity to this conversation without all the slavery and indentured servitude. both Democrats and Republicans are completely wrong on this issue. This issue was settled 100 years ago or better. When you finish your time to the state, you are a citizen once again, legally able to do everything a normal citizen can do. Whether you're a felon or not, it does not matter. These Democrats played a game thinking that all these felons are going to vote for them. We're not. I'm a felon because I drove on a suspended license. I've been a felon for the last 20 years. Can't vote, can't do nothing. Can't own a gun, can't do nothing for driving on a suspended license. It's ridiculous, it's unfair, and it's just not right.
It is right. You're correct. And that's why the law was passed in 2018. If you did the time, you should be able to vote. But now they're saying they've passed another law saying doing the time means paying all the fines. So, I mean...
But that's the way the original creators of this country thought in the first place. Once you pay your debt to society, you are once more a legal citizen.
That's the way it should be.
Why this even needs to be a bill or a counter bill by the Republicans is ridiculous. We're having the same fights over something that's been established.
Right. It's like people are inventing a problem so that they can fight about the problem rather than allowing people to just go on with their lives.
Yeah, but what Sean doesn't realize is
you're creating a problem out of a problem.
But we're talking about the state constitution. Every state is different. We're talking about a state issue here. And right after the Civil War, the state of Florida passed a law that if you were a convicted felon, you could not vote. I don't care if you did your time or not. So they changed that in 2018. Which they should have done, you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But the problem is now they're making it more difficult. I mean, now they're saying not only do you have to have done your time, any outstanding fines have to be paid before you get your right to vote back. Okay.
Right.
And that's what I'm against, because you've got a lot of people who are trying to support their families with their job and can't afford to pay some of these crazy fines, because what the state does, they take a lot of these fines and they sell them to third-party companies, and there's like a 40% interest rate. A $10,000 fine becomes a $30,000 fine. Yeah.
So don't you think instead of bothering the felon with all this baloney, that we should better the system instead and get rid of these people that keep coming up with these crazy-ass laws?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. But those are the people that are in
Civil War. This was what was normal. You pay your debt to society, you're once more a citizen. So automatically, after the Civil War, as you say, Florida made that law. Instantly, that's an unjust law.
Yeah, but it's been on the books for a long time. They just recently changed it in 2018.
Oh, yeah,
you know?
Right.
It was on the books for a while.
Republicans don't want to come along thinking, oh, no, they're going to all vote Democrat. And that's what this is all over, is votes.
And see, there's a big issue right there that you just pointed out, Sean. It's about paying your debt to society. And the debate seems to entail, well, what part of the debt, and can we differentiate this debt into multiple dimensions? And it's people splitting hairs to create problems so that they can control a voter base, or so that they can restrict felons from participating in things, or whatever their agenda happens to be with purpose to it. But they keep splitting hairs to keep generating new problems rather than letting people settle their debt to society.
Well, Sean,
I'm absolutely in agreement with you, brother.
Yeah, Sean, do you have your right to vote back? I mean,
I just recently got it since 2018.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, so you don't have any outstanding fines or anything like that?
None. I finished that almost 15, 20 years ago.
And you just got your right to vote back. Look how many elections you missed.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's really unfair. I mean, you pay your taxes. You know, you do what you're supposed to do. What happened in the past is in the past, and for the past 15 years, you've been denied a right to vote. That's totally wrong.
I've been denied the vast majority of my rights because of the status of felon, which, again, just isn't right. But, yeah, I appreciate y'all's time.
Yeah.
Y'all do a great show. I watch you every week, and look forward to watching more.
Yeah, you brought in some good ideas and some good points. We appreciate it.
Hey, Sean, I appreciate your call today, brother. Thank you so much for listening. We got one more caller for the day. We've got Joyce from Jacksonville, and she's on the line. Joyce, you want to talk about, shifting gears a little bit, you want to talk about the issues with oxycontin. Welcome to Legal Live with Chuck and Eddie Farah.
Hey, Joyce.
Hey, Joyce.
Yes. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay. My daughter passed away in 2009. On her death certificate is oxycontin. And then I found out years later that the McKinsey group, the consultation group to Purdue, put out the lie to doctors to give them a higher dose of the medication, which caused all this problem and killed my daughter. I want to know, can we go after the McKinsey group? Because they're the one that put the lie out consultation-wise to Purdue.
It's a complicated question, Joyce. Yes, I'm aware of the settlement with the McKinsey group. They're paying hundreds of millions of dollars because for the people who don't know what Joyce is talking about, the McKinsey group is a consulting firm. They were hired by Purdue Pharmaceuticals to promote OxyContin, to market it. How do we market OxyContin? How do we get people to buy it? And that's what the McKinsey group did, and they did a good job. They got a lot of people hooked on it. They got a lot of doctors prescribing it, and now they're settling. I know, Joyce, I don't know, because typically, did she pass away in Florida?
She passed away in Georgia.
Okay,
but she was born in Jacksonville, Florida. But she was living there, and the doctor she had in Georgia had on OxyContin.
Right.
It's on her death certificate.
It was a Georgia doctor, right, that did it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I mean, really, and that happened how long ago? How many years?
She died in 2009 of OxyContin overdose.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure about this, but I'm afraid there may be a statute of limitations issue because it's been so long.
Well, with it being so fresh in the news, it's so fresh, and to go after I want to go after McKinsey,
right?
Because they the one put the lie out. I know there was the consultation group to Purdue, but McKinsey needs to be handled.
Yeah, McKinsey. Yeah, they're paying a big fine. As you know, they're paying a big fine right now, hundreds of millions of dollars.
How could I join that? Oh, it's death certificate. My baby's death certificate got OxyContin on it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I don't know. It's my understanding a lot of that money is going to the communities to reimburse.
I don't want to go to the community. I had my daughter left me 2 little girls to raise, and it took money out my pocket to raise them because McKinsey Group helped kill my daughter.
You never pursued anything against a doctor?
Through a lie, saying give them a higher dose, and they know that was addictive.
Right.
And the doctors was given the higher doses and got all these young people addicted and killed them.
Right.
Half of them.
Right. No, you're exactly. It's happened. I mean, we talked about it last week on the show. I think in 2020 was the highest death rate due to OxyContin because it's COVID related. I think like 40 or 50,000 people died as a result.
I remember you had that statistic last week about that.
I have to pull it out, but.
Yeah, what I want to know, to get to the meat of the matter, how can I join in to go against McKinsey? Because it was their lie, their group, that they put that lie out that started the snowball rolling, and it got out of control.
I don't know. I really don't know because
find out?
I don't know. If you were to leave your phone number with Scott, maybe I can look at it and find out.
All right, Joyce. If you'll stay on the line for me, Joyce, I'll get your information in just a minute.
Get her phone number, then maybe I can, because I know about it. We talked about it on the show, and I just don't know who's getting the money.
I want action on my end. If y'all could do something, I appreciate it. But I want to make a quick comment about the state needs to stop messing with these young men driver's license, because that's adding to unemployment.
Yes.
And crime, because if they can't drive to get to work, they can't make no money.
Right, exactly.
So it's an oxymoron.
And if they can't make the money, they can't settle the fines. And if they can't settle the fines, they can't reinstate their rights, and the system's working hard against them.
Yeah. It's a catch-22.
If you can't drive and you work out on Phillips Highway, how are they supposed to get to work?
There's no way to do it. You're right, Joyce. You took the words out of my mouth. It's what I thought we mentioned earlier. You've got the fine. Yeah. If you don't pay your fine, they take away your right to drive, which means they take away your livelihood. Doesn't make sense.
It's undercover voter suppression.
Yep.
It's undercover.
Yeah, it is. Oh, yeah.
It's suppression in all areas, and the state should be ashamed of themselves, adding to unemployment and robbery and crime, because the guys can't do what they need to do, because they need to stop messing with those lights. So y'all need to pass a law submit a law up there to stop messing with the license and do something else that they need to do, but leave the license alone.
Thanks a lot, Joyce. I appreciate it.
Joyce, if you'll stay on the line, I'll get your contact information in just a minute. We'll be able to follow up with you off air. Chuck, Eddie, I appreciate it. As always, another opportunity to spend a day with you. Thank you so much for your time. On behalf of the callers, thanks so much for calling in and participating in the show today. You've been listening to Legal Live with Chuck and Eddie Farah here on 104.5 WOKV, Jacksonville's News and Talk.